The Sandia Mountain Pnti and their worldwide CE5 contact with Sue Walker and Reverend White Otter. Copyright 2019. Sue Walker. My name is Sue Walker. My spouse is Reverend White Otter. Who are we? Well, we're a married couple that reside in the Albuquerque, New Mexico area that have an unusual story to share with you. Our background is rather unusual as well. I've spent the last 29 years as a professional detail clairvoyant and medical intuitive, and I've honestly worked for 3-letter agencies on murder and missing person cases. I've been on national and international television. I've done more radio shows than I can count, and I'm now an author of a book, co-author of a book called Inviting E.T. Spent my career delving into the paranormal, whether that subject matter deals with hauntings and ghosts, multidimensional beings, Sasquatch, or now anything Star Nation or extraterrestrial related. Reverend White Otter is a true Renaissance man. He grew up in California, and his family was involved with the tree nursery business. Otter honestly has experience digging up live trees in California, putting them on their sides in the belly of a 747, flying them to the Middle East, and replanting them, getting them to grow. After he retired from the tree nursery business, he went to culinary school and became a very well-known 5-star French chef. Turned down a job at the White House. And during all of this time had a real special interest in historic reenacting. And so knows his history backwards, forwards, and upside down, especially on the eastern coastline of the United States. Otter and I both have spent decades now doing paranormal and energy research. He is a 35-year student of shamanism and energy work and is specially trained in 5 separate modalities of Reiki. Both of us are also ET contactees and experiencers. My experiences began about age 3.5. His began about age 10. And so when things started for us down this unusual path in September of 2013, we came into this situation with much more experience than the average person. It's a good story. It's a true story. And this is how it started. Otter and I are married now. We got married at the end of 2016. However, in September of 2013, we were still dating. And I wanted to come from my home in Iowa to New Mexico to see how Otter lived and to stay with him for a bit. I took the train down and arrived the second week of September and was enjoying getting to know New Mexico. I'd never been to the state. I came assuming very little and knew some very basic pieces of information. I knew that the hot air balloon fiesta was held here. I knew that Los Alamos and Sandia National Labs and other secret kind of hush-hush projects happened here. I also knew New Mexico was the land of the Roswell ET crash. But other than that, I assumed that New Mexico was all desert and cactus and flat. Boy, was I wrong. I'd been here maybe 10 days and was enjoying watching television with Otter in the living room one night. It was the semifinals of America's Got Talent that week, and we enjoyed watching the show up to that point in time, and we were talking with each other in the living room about the performances, and after a particularly good performer, I turned to Otter and I said, Wow, he was really great. I think he should win. And something very strange happened. A male voice that I'd never heard before, that was not local in the room with us, like a ghost, suddenly popped up in my head and in my brain, clear as I'm talking to you right now. I heard him say, "He was good. I think he should win." My head automatically, suddenly whipped around, and I stared out our picture window that faces this view of the Sandia Mountain. And without knowing then how I knew for a fact that the voice was coming from inside the mountain. I stared hard at a single spot, and the voice went silent. And I thought, what the heck was that? And because it didn't continue, I just kind of chalked it up to an anomaly. The very next day, we're watching the news before supper, and the voice pops up again and comments on something that we're watching on the news. The following day, I hear it a third time. Same male voice. Sounds calm, wise, friendly, male. If it had been a Earth human, I think I would have put this person in their late 40s, mid 50s. Mature. After I hear the voice a third time, I think to myself, maybe I better ask Otter. And here I am visiting his home for the first time ever. And I'm honestly afraid that if this lady from Iowa asks him about a strange, disembodied voice that she's hearing in his living room that comes from beneath the Sandia Mountain, 10 miles to the east of his house, I kind of wondered if he was going to dump me back on the train and send me straight back to Iowa, thinking he had a crazy person on his hands. But I took a chance. And after hearing this male voice a third time, I turned to Otter and said, Otter, I got a strange question for you. You ever hear a voice coming from the mountain? I keep hearing this guy. And Otter immediately answered, "Oh, them! Oh, they talk all the time. They talk nonstop. Are you kidding? They've been talking ever since I moved in here in 2009. They talk so much I have to tune them out. Why?" And so I was quite relieved when he said that. And I said, "Well, I keep hearing this guy. And I'm not sure if he's from here. I don't know who he is, but I've heard him 3 times now. And I don't think I want to keep referring to him as the voice from the mountain. That sounds kind of dumb. I've been thinking about giving him a nickname. He comes from the Sandia Mountain, so I think I'll call him Sandia." I figured at the time that Sandia sounded as much like a person's name as anything, like Sandy. And I had completely, at that moment in time, forgotten that in Spanish, the word Sandia means watermelon. Sandia Mountains are named that because in certain light you can see the stripes. The topography on the top of the mountain reminds people of the stripes on the rind of a watermelon. What I didn't know is the voice from the mountain was listening. And as soon as I turned to Otter and said, "I think I'm going to call the voice from the mountain Sandia," he piped up and he said, "Sandia, watermelon head. That'll work." And I heard him, and my head whipped around, and I stared at that spot on the mountain again. And I thought, who the heck is this? Watermelon head, that'll work. And I knew that Sandia was hinting at something. And I had a suspicion what it was. But I needed more information. When I went back home to Iowa, I didn't hear the voice from the mountain. Whenever I returned, and I did in November of 2013, came back to stay with Otter to spend the Thanksgiving holiday with him. As soon as I returned, the voice from the mountain started talking again, every day. A little bit here, a little bit there. Just small quips, small quotes, small bits of conversation. And then it became several times a day. And Otter and I started to get to know this guy. And finally, mid-November of 2013, I figured we'd talk like neighbors across a backyard fence long enough. And so one day I got brave and I said, "Hey, Sandia, I got a question for you. What's your real name and where's home?" And Sandia answered immediately, and he answered in detail. He said, "My real name is Tookum." And I said, "What?" He said, "Tookum." I said, slower. He said, "Tookum." I said, slower. He said, "Tookum." I said, "Tilcum." And he indicated that that was close enough. He immediately spelled it for me, TLKM. And he followed that up with, "Our written language seldom uses vowels unless they are borrowed from another language." And I said, "So where's home?" He said, "Home is the fifth planet orbiting the further of the two stars of the binary system you call Zeta Reticuli in the constellation of Reticulum, which is a southern hemisphere constellation, difficult for you to see from here." And I went, "Yeah, okay." And he said, "The name of our world is Puntel." And I went, "Puntel." And he spelled it for me, P'Ntl. You may call us the Pnti. I said, "You're the Pnti from Puntel, from Zeta Reticuli, the further of the two stars, 40 light years away almost," he said. "I manage the Sandia Mountain Information Station, which has been in existence for several millennia now. This facility was retrofitted into the ancient tunnel system that was left by the last age of man, that runs north-south along the eastern side of the Rocky Mountain chain. It runs at least 2 miles deep, and we have actually many, many miles of tunnels within this system." What Sandia told us that day in November of 2013, we had no way of corroborating the information and just had to take it at face value for almost 2 years. It wasn't until we met a Native American gentleman who grew up in New Mexico, who had been trained as a boy in the history of extraterrestrial contact with his people. And he helped us fill in some of the rest of the story. This is Clifford Mahuti. Clifford is a Zuni Pueblo Native American gentleman, one of the last trained in ancient Zuni, not modern Zuni, but ancient Zuni prayers, and taught by his elders about the extraterrestrials and other star nations that reside in the New Mexico, Arizona area. He knew that there was more than one star nation that comes from the Sandia Mountain to visit the Zuni and other Pueblo peoples. Now, the Zuni, the Hopi, and the other Pueblo peoples have been interacting with star nations at specific locations on specific days, using specific prayers and offering specific gifts for centuries now. They've been trading with the Star Nation folks. What do they trade? What do they gift? What do they get back? Traditionally, one of the things has been seeds. They traded seeds. We spoke with Tilcom for a whole year and a half before he introduced us to anyone else. We knew in chatting with Tilcom and learning about him and his culture and the Pnti and why they were on Earth, that we knew that he was not alone beneath the Sandia Mountain. When you speak with someone telepathically, sometimes you pick up on their side thoughts, and the images in Commander Tilcom's side thoughts were of others that looked like him. In the first week of February of 2015, he introduced us to two others. A gal by the name of Jeruti and a fellow by the name of Rahaz, or as we've come to lovingly call him, Radar. Jeruti was introduced to us as one of their cultural liaisons. Hers was often the first information station voice interstellar travelers that came seeking information from the Pnti station heard. Rahaz, or Radar, was introduced to us as one of their young pilots, a genius-level stellar cartographer, and their Earth media specialist. It was Radar's job to monitor our movies, our television, our podcast, our internet, to keep the Pnti finger on the pulse of the opinion that Earth humans have of Star Nation beings and their readiness for contact. In May of 2015, Commander Tilcom surprised us one day and came to me and said, "We understand that Earth has something called social media." Apparently, he'd been talking to Radar about it. "Would it be permitted for us to have an account?" he asked. And my first and most immediate response was, "I don't see why not. As far as I know, there's nothing illegal." And so in May of 2015, for a month, we tried having Commander Tilcom share on Facebook. At the end of that month, he was not satisfied with the spread of information across borders, boundaries, cultures, languages, peoples across the face of this planet. And so the first week of June of 2015, we opened up a Twitter account for them at Sandia Wisdom, or Sandia the ET, on Twitter. And on a regular daily basis almost, Commander Tilcom began sharing things about himself, about Pontel, about why they were here. And then later, Jeruti and Rahaz, or Radar, started sharing as well. Honestly, the three of them very quickly became quite popular. They were on Twitter for a whole year before we were introduced to anyone else that was a staff member of the Sandia Mountain information station. In June of 2016, Commander Tilcom brought a gal and introduced her as Pnti, our new telepathy instructor. Pnti was to help us, Otter and I, with our own telepathic content and clarity and abilities, but also was there to dictate an instruction manual to be published to provide the same information for the rest of the world. In June, July, and August of 2016, we took dictation from Pnti and developed the hard copy of the written version of the Telepathy 101 primer. It took us a whole year after that before we had a format of a slide presentation of 285 slides that Pnti had approved of that went with what she had dictated the summer of 16. All of that together, the images and her dictation, turned out to become what is now known as the Telepathy 101 primer. It was published online December of 2017, precisely the moment the winter solstice began. It was first published in a PDF format in English. 285 slides also happens to equate to the 285 days of Earth human gestation. Not sure why she did that, but I know there was a reason. You can get your own Telepathy 101 primer, by the way, if you go to the website that also was launched at the end of 2017 called officialfirstcontact.com. Pnti recommended that individuals study the primer for 100 days before they attempt trying to invite the Pnti. She told us that it usually takes about 30 days of practice with feedback before you can distinguish other telepathic pings from your own head thought voice. But in that first 100 days after the primer was published, the Twitter followers around the world really, truly stepped up to the plate, and we appreciate that so much. And so did the Pnti. They translated within that first 3 months the primer into 10 major Earth languages for free. Volunteers did it. We were amazed. And then things really started to speed up, guys. Between January and March of 2018, this is right after the primer was published, people from all over the planet started studying in their own languages. And after that first 100 days, they began to invite the Pnti. And when they did that, many of them soon started to get contact. And then repeat contact. And then they began to recognize who telepathically was reaching them. And they began to talk to them and have their own dialogues. In that first 100 days of 2018, contactees all over the planet reached out to us, to Otter and I. We got phone calls, we got emails, we got text messages, we got people showing up at our door having come halfway around the planet to see us. And all of these contactees were absolutely vested in helping the rest of the world understand that what was happening to them was real. They wanted to prove that their interactions were not just made up stuff. Anybody can make up, oh, I had a telepathic conversation story. They knew that. And so instead, they wanted to also gather hard evidence. They started to reach out to us with all kinds of questions. Oh man, late March into April of 2018, Oh my gosh, guys. We got slammed. We just got slammed. They had questions of all different kinds, and their questions overlapped. But the evidence that they began submitting for us to publish on officialfirstcontact.com was amazing. This is just a little bit of sample of what we first started to publish early on. In the upper left corner, you see a craft with a plasma field around it. This is a still shot taken from a video filmed by Jason Gerhardt in Florida, USA. The second site is a landing site. It's difficult to see in this image, but if you blow up the close-up, you can see that the grass is swirled, and Jim Hazlett took this photo in the central United States, and he found triangular depressions in the soil that looked like something weighty had pressed it down. He assumed it was landing gear from a craft. The third video, the 4 small bright balls of white light that appear connected, is not a regular old drone of ours. This was a large craft. What Sandia told us later is they call this a drone carrier. Each of those white balls of light detaches from the original craft, is an information gathering device, goes off, gathers whatever information and data it needs to, and then comes back and reattaches itself to the craft, and off they go. On the bottom row in the left, you see a pillow stain. Experiencer Kevin Estrella in the Toronto, Canada area found that he was having strange amber liquid drain out of his ears onto his pillow. He found that he was gathering strange soil samples in his bed in the morning, even though he'd climbed into bed with clean sheets the night before, and the soil didn't seem to resemble anything that was local to his Toronto, Canada area. Kevin also began to find other evidence, things being moved, and several times has found 4-fingered handprints. This one happens to be in the dust in front of his television in his apartment. By April of 2018, guys, we were just slammed. We were swamped with phone calls, texts, emails, visitors from all over, and hundreds of people online began asking, how can I get a visit? We had a lot of the same kinds of questions coming from the experiencers. A lot of repeat questions. And so Otter and I ended up contacting Telecom and Pnti and saying, we have all of these common questions among the experiencers. And guys, the busyness of all of these questions is going to get nothing but worse. We can't field all of these on our own as knowledge about you and contacting you grows. What should we do? Together, Telecom, Pnti, Otter, and I came up with the idea of putting together the common questions with the stories of the 2018 experiencers that had requested visits after studying the Telepathy 101 primer. We put all of this, along with quotes from Telecom and Pnti, together into what is now the book called Inviting E.T., which was published August of 2018. What's Inviting E.T. about? Well, basically, whether you're by yourself or you're with a group, it's how to invite the Pnti, how to host your own CE5 event. We have appendices in the back that help you with large group things, but we also have chapters that deal with all kinds of unusual and practical issues, such as, what do you do when you see a craft? What do you do if it lands? What happens if you observe a portal opening? How do you behave if somebody shows up standing right next to you? What are the common greetings? What can you expect if you have missing time? How do you deal with group fear issues, etc., etc.? In the back of the book, we also inserted the contact and protocols that Tilcom and Pnti had taught us about inviting them. A lot of people ask us, Otter and I, have you seen them in person really with your own eyes? Yeah. Yes. Just yes. A lot. Um, I can give you 3 just common examples. In 2017, that was the first time I ever remember physically bumping into one of them, brushing up against them. I was coming down the hall about 2 o'clock in the morning on my way to the kitchen to get a glass of water, and there was a person huddled up against the wall in the shadows. And I didn't see her until I was right on top of her and my elbow brushed her elbow. And I looked and I recognized it was Sarah, one of the employees at the Sandia Mountain Information Station. And at that point in time, we had gotten over our fear of having them show up. And I honestly said, "Oh, I'm sorry, Sarah, I didn't see you there. I was just on my way to the kitchen for a glass of water." And I didn't even stop to talk to her. I just kept going and went and got my glass of water. Of course, by the time I got that and came back, she was gone. It wasn't too long after that that Otter had gotten up early, lit the wood stove one morning, started the coffee pot, was getting his first cup of coffee, came around the corner back to sit in his spot in the living room, and there was Tilcom standing right there, 4 feet in front of him. He stopped short with his coffee. He looks at Tilcom. Tilcom blinks and looks at him. And Otter says something like, "Well, hello there." And Tilcom vanishes. And Otter just kind of shakes his head, goes down and sits in his chair and goes, "Well, that was an interesting start to the day." This year, June, we usually play dominoes on our kitchen table on a regular basis just to provide us with the telepathy practice. Otter and I have agreed that we can telepathically cheat to try and best one another in dominoes, and frequently we have a great deal of fun doing that with one of our friends by the name of Domino Don. And so we're playing dominoes. It's about 3:30 in the afternoon, mid-June, Saturday afternoon, and we stop, take a break, and I have to go out to the garage, our attached car garage, to pick up something from the freezer. And so I open the door from the house to the garage. And we only have one vehicle in the garage. It's our 2013 Prius. And I glanced through the windshield of the vehicle and saw 2 heads. Couldn't quite see the eyes because these heads were short. And I could just see the eyebrow ridges over the dashboard. But there was one in the passenger side seat and one in the driver's side seat. And the one in the driver's side seat had 2 hands perfectly curled around the steering wheel in the 10 and 2 positions. Each of them had 4 long fingers. And I looked at the rounded bald head, and I looked at the 4-fingered hands, and I looked at the 2 of them, and I stopped short, and I grinned, and I said, "Busted. You guys are so busted." And suddenly there was this huge wave of emotional startle response coming from the vehicle, and the 2 heads vanished. I laughed, got whatever I needed from the freezer, opened back up the door to the house real wide, swept my hand through the door and said, "Well, you might as well come on in. We're just playing dominoes. You can help me beat Otter." And that's how I handled it. We've had things occur outside of our home as well, with witnesses. It's not unusual for visitors to us to have sightings on their way home, to be honest. Way back in 2016, Tilcom taught us a greeting from ground to the sky if you know that you've got a ship aloft and you want to hail them. Um, since all ships, or nearly all ships, that enter into our atmosphere can create their own cloud camouflage, and frequently do, the standard greeting from ground to sky to your ship aloft is, "Hello, the clouds," because sometimes your ship is hiding in a cloud and you're not sure which one. So Tilcom taught us that not only do they create cloud camouflage, but they can shape the clouds into whatever shapes they wish, and we've seen them do that on multiple occasions. He said, if you suspect that there's a ship aloft in a cloud, the standard greeting is, "Hello, the clouds," and then introduce yourself and ask the pilot to please blink their ship lights so you know which cloud they're in. We have witnessed this with others on multiple occasions. A year later, in 2017, we'd been practicing watching the clouds and trying to ask for a blink back. And we started noticing that between a couple of times a year, we would see the leading edge of a ship just peeking out of a cloud. When that happened, we had gotten comfortable enough with saying hello, the clouds, and greeting anybody coming into the Albuquerque area that we thought we'd be nice. And so the first time I saw a leading edge of a ship peeking out of a cloud, I hailed them. "Hello, the clouds. My name is Sue Walker, and I'm down here beneath you in the Albuquerque metropolitan area. The Pnti have taught us about saying hello to the clouds, and so I wanted to greet you and say hello to you. And oh, by the way, just in case you don't want to be seen by the locals, your ship is showing. You may want to increase your cloud camouflage just to remain unseen. I hope you have a really good day. Wear your day with ease." And that was basically the greeting that I sent up. The most common response to that kind of a greeting was a sudden increase in the size of the cloud, along with a final blink or blink back, almost as if the pilot was saying, "Thank you." When we have greeted the clouds in the Albuquerque area and the ships coming in, drifting in from the southwest, we hail them and frequently have gotten unusual responses back. Everything from, "Who is that? Is that an Earth human? We were told Earth humans don't know telepathy," to, "Oh, you must be Drudy's friend Sue and Otter. Oh, we've heard all about you. How are you? So nice of you to say something." And then sometimes we get a, "Who is this? Who are you?" kind of terse response, and we have to explain. Have the Pnti ever taken anything from us, moved things at our house? Not only do they move things, they haven't broken anything yet, but they've knocked things over or knocked things off the wall. We hear them regularly rummaging around in our cupboards in the kitchen as well as my art studio. And they have borrowed things from us. And they've also brought them back when we haven't even been anywhere close to home. If they borrow things and bring them back at home, they will return them, usually not where they took them from, but frequently in an easy to find spot. You might find an earring in the middle of the kitchen floor that you've just mopped, or you might make the bed and turn around and there's the missing set of car keys that suddenly vanished the week before. If it's small, if it's unique, if it's unusual, if it's handmade, we see them borrow it and bring it back. We have had them bring things back to us when we have been hundreds of miles from home. Don't know why they did it then, except maybe to tell us that they're still keeping tabs on us, even if we're not at our house. In July of this year, I was in the backyard on a Saturday morning explaining the cloud camouflage to a girlfriend of mine as well as a visitor from Colorado by the name of Garrett Duncan. Garrett is a Navajo healer and has had more than one visit by the Pnti. And so we were standing in the backyard and I was explaining to them about the cloud camouflage and hello the clouds and the blink blink and the your ship is showing. And Garrett calls up to the sky and he said, "Well, you guys could come show us that you're here right now. Hello, the clouds. Can you blink, blink?" And instead of a blink, blink response, in the sky, maybe a quarter mile over our heads, my friend Anne, Garrett, and I all watch as a small donut cloud suddenly forms right above us, right about the size of one of the Pnti's usual six-man skipper ships. And we watched this donut form in the sky precisely over our heads, real low, lower than all the other clouds. And we all start to laugh and chatter about it. The wind catches it, the donut kind of elongates to kind of a C shape, then a J shape. And we're still chattering about it, looking up at the sky. And whoever what the pilot was did it again. They repeated the perfect donut in the sky in the exact same spot just to prove that it was something that we couldn't write off as an anomaly. A lot of our friends are into the paranormal and have done paranormal research for a while. We met this wonderful gentleman, Darrell Stokes, in late August of 2017. Darrell is a massage therapist by day, and he practices out of a facility in the Sedona, Arizona area. However, his day job is one thing, his hobby is paranormal photography, and he's fabulous. Well, we taught Darrell about the Pnti, and as soon as he he started to practice his telepathy and invite them, and so he began to get visits at his home in Sedona. What he did not expect was to get visits and have his clients at work spot the Pnti. And so several months after he had met us and had the Pnti visit him at his home, he's working on a client on his massage therapy table one day in the office in Sedona. And his client suddenly jerks. And he said, "I'm sorry, did I hurt you?" And she said, "No, no, no. Darrell, I don't know how to tell you this. There's an extraterrestrial standing in the corner watching us." And Darrell didn't miss a beat. He said, "Oh, yeah? What do they look like?" And she said, "They have a very large head, large, dark, almond-shaped eyes, not much nose, a smile, long, skinny arms and legs, 4 fingers, stands about 4.5 feet tall. I don't know why they're here, but they're just watching you, and this one has a smile on his face. I don't get it." As soon as he was done with his client, Darrell goes to his office, reaches on his bookshelf for a copy of our Inviting E.T. book, and shows the cover of it to his massage therapy client. And she suddenly shrieks, "That's him! That's exactly who I saw, right down to the smile. That's the extraterrestrial I saw standing in the corner, watching you work on me." And Darrell smiled and said, "That's PETA." And then he opened up the back of the book and showed her some of the other photos. And she looked through them all, and she looked at the cover of the book, and she tapped the cover of the book, and she said, "No, it was this one I saw." Darrell said, "That's PETA." Folks that interview Otter and I are also not immune to getting a visit. We've been interviewed a couple of times by a family that has a podcast out of Dover, England, called Fascination Street. And this podcast was started by a father and a son. Jimmy is the father, and Mika is a 10-year-old son. And as soon as they started studying the Telepathy 101 primer and the Inviting ET book, well, it was Mika who began to get visits with radar and PETA in his bedroom. Not just one either. And in fact, this past year, we were being interviewed live by them on air one Saturday afternoon. It was evening in England. And Mika and Jimmy are in front of the camera asking us questions about the Telepathy 101 primer and the CE5 contact. When all of a sudden both of them stop, their heads whip over, and they both stare to their right. And we heard Jimmy say something to the effect of, "Think we may have a visitor." And he slowly takes the laptop that has the camera they're using to broadcast and turns it to see another part of the room that's been off camera. And he turns it toward a picture window where the blinds are still swaying back and forth, that had been moved by the Pnti who'd come to visit the Pearsons while we were on air with them. They're not the only ones. Back in late August of 2018, we were doing our last interview right before publishing the Inviting ET book. And this interview happened to be by a pair of co-hosts from the Bay FM radio station in Brisbane, Australia. And the co-hosts were a believer experiencer by the name of Wookie and a skeptic by the name of Sifu. And the two together put together a really good paranormal podcast, broadcast kind of show that they called Spooky Action Radio. Well, we expected to tape with them for a couple of hours, and the taping of the program ended up to be more like 3.5 to 4, so they needed to edit it down to fit into their 2-hour format. While we were being interviewed, Wookie is asking us all of these questions about the worldwide CE5 contact, and Sifu is leaning back with his arms crossed, not sure if he's buying all this. And Sifu flippantly says during the interview, "Yeah, the Pnti can come visit me, that'd be all right, eh?" Guys, 10 days later, Wookie is walking up to Sifu's house. They're going to finish the editing of the show on Sifu's computer. He's got the audio equipment there at his home. And then they're going to broadcast it. And so Wookie has arrived to help him finish that editing process. But as Wookie's walking up to the door of the house, Sifu's house, he hears Sifu and his spouse. It sounded like having an argument. And he knocks on the door, and Sifu comes, and Wookie says, "Should I go? I hear you're having a bit of a hard time here." And Seafood said, "No, come on in. My wife got a visit." And Wookie said, "What?" "My wife got a visit, we think, by the Pnti last night." "Oh, you have to tell me that story," Wookie said. Apparently, Sifu's spouse, who also was a skeptic, woke up to an extraterrestrial standing next to her bed that had all the descriptions of our Pnti friends: large dark head, gray skin tone, large dark eyes, skinny limbs, 4 fingers. Somehow in her interaction, whether she got scared or something else had happened, I don't know. But there was a tussle, and she ended up with a scrap of the clothing that the Pnti was wearing. And it had remained under her fingernails, and she had that scrap and showed it to both Wookie and Sifu. And she described her visitor. Sifu is kind of overwhelmed, still trying to digest all this and trying to understand if this is really, really real. Wookie, on the other hand, gets smart. He looks at his watch, does a quick calculation, and figures out it's morning in Australia, but it's still evening in New Mexico. And he said, I can find out if this really is a Pnti and validate this and verify it if you want right here, right now. And so he texts me from Australia. And it's close to 11 o'clock at night, and I get a text message from Australia from Wookie. It says, hey, Sue, if you got a minute, I got a question for you. If Sifu's family got a visit, who would it likely be? Where would they be coming from? And what would they be wearing? And that was it. That was all he told me. And I went, gee, I don't know. Let me ask the mountain. And so I contacted the Pnti. The Sandia station. Drudy happened to be on the desk. And so I said, hey, Drudy, Wookie's got a question. If Sifu got a visit, who would it likely be? Where would they be from? And what would they be wearing? And Drudy answered me immediately. And she said, well, it wouldn't be us. That is a little far and out of our jurisdiction. It would likely be one of the staff members from the Tasman Sea Base, which is an aquatic underwater facility between Australia and New Zealand. She said standard issue uniform at the Tasman Sea Base looks for all the world like a black wetsuit, only it's not made of rubbery material. It's made of a matte, stretchy kind of material. It is form-fitting to the body, long sleeve all the way down to the wrists and all the way down to the ankles. You may or may not be able to see the closure in front that looks for all the world like a long zipper that can be a hint of white or completely black. But standard issue uniform coming from the Tasman Sea Base would be what looks like a black wetsuit. So I take all this information from Drudy and I get a hold of Wookie and type it back to him on text message. And a minute later, he gets it and shows it to Sifu and Sifu's wife. And Sifu's wife confirms that is exactly what her visitor was wearing. It's not too long after that, next day or so, that Sifu decides to quit the show. Wookie, however, does not give up. Wookie starts to invite the Pnti more often, and in fact opens up his home to trainees who need to find a place to visit Earth humans for the first time ever because they're nervous. So Wookie said that the new trainees could come visit his home. Well, inviting new trainees comes with inviting mistakes. And so these guys aren't perfect and they goof things up on a regular basis. The first thing that happened at Wookie's home, and Wookie, by the way, is an extremely credible witness. For his day job, the man works for law enforcement and investigates people who have experience with crime scenes and re-interviews them to gather more information for the law enforcement agencies. So, yeah, law enforcement interviewer, that's our Wookie. Wookie goes to work one evening and his wife is left home with 2 kids. She puts the cat out, that's the outdoor cat, locks the back door and goes to bed. About 2:30 in the morning, there's a commotion in the kitchen. She hears a ruckus and something sounds like it breaks. And she wakes up a little more and realizes that the outdoor cat is now indoors on her bed and snuggling with her. And at first she wonders if Wookie has come home early, and she gets up, not knowing if she's got an intruder, an animal in the house, or just a spouse that has come home. And she goes to the kitchen to find a broken bottle of essentially their version of ketchup, 6 feet from where it normally is in the cupboard, now in the middle of the kitchen floor, busted. The back door is unlocked, the outdoor cat is left in, and other than that, there's no real sign of an intruder. So that first time, it's kind of an anomaly, but after that, it was probably a month and a half later, Wookie and his spouse are sitting in the living room one night about 10:30 watching television. And they have a walk-in closet or pantry where they keep their dry goods and canned goods. And from inside that closet, they hear a commotion, like a box of food drops on the ground. And then they hear a slight thump, and then a thud. And then the door of the walk-in pantry bumps open right in front of the two of them. They're sitting 20 feet from it. Both of them are on their feet in a moment. And Wookie goes to investigate, turns the light on, finds a box of Pop-Tarts that he bought in America, open on the floor of the pantry. One of the foil packages has been pulled out, but it hasn't been opened yet. Wookie's wife comes in behind him, looks at it, and goes, "I think you need to have a talk with your friends." Wookie looks at the Pop-Tarts and realizes that maybe the ketchup bottle and the Pop-Tarts incidents are linked, takes the Pop-Tart out of its foil package, puts it into a Ziploc bag, and puts a note in it. And the note reads something to the effect of, "You're very, very welcome to the Pop-Tarts. Sorry you had a problem. Hope everybody's okay." And he seals the note inside the bag of Pop-Tarts and goes and hangs it in a tree in the backyard. This is 11 o'clock at night. The next morning, he can't wait to get up and see if the Pop-Tarts are gone. So at first light, he heads straight out to the backyard, and in fact, there are no Pop-Tarts in the bag. The Ziploc bag is there. The note is still inside the bag. No Pop-Tarts, but the Ziploc bag has been resealed with the note inside. There's not chew marks on the bag. There's no holes in the bag. The only way somebody could have gotten the Pop-Tarts was to unzip the baggie, take them, and re-zip it up. Doesn't sound like the work of a wallaby to me. On May 11th of this year, one of our Telepathy 101 students, Leslie, was sitting in her living room in the Raleigh, North Carolina area, studying both the Inviting ET book and the Telepathy 101 primer with her son, Ben. And as they're studying and talking about the Inviting ET book, not near their laptops or computers or notepads or phones, not near anything electronic, they suddenly hear their printer in the next room start itself up and print out a single sheet of paper. Like most logical folks, Leslie figures they've been hacked. Somebody randomly driving by has activated the printer in some fashion. So they shrug it off and while it's a curiosity, aren't terribly upset by it, until they go into the next room and find out what was printed out. And this is exactly what Leslie found on her printer was a note that said, "We will leave you with our phrase of parting goodbyes. Wear your day with ease. Pnti." A month ago, plus 10 days, so less than 45 days ago, guys, October 8th, 2019. This is in St. Louis, Missouri. One of the Twitter followers goes by the Twitter handle I am one. And if you spell I am one backwards, you get Enomai. And so Enomai gets a telepathic prompt by the Pnti, and they say, "We're here. Go outside, take your camera. You can catch us on film." And he does, and he gets 9 minutes of recorded aerial footage of the Pnti slowly working their way around his apartment complex. At the very, very end of the 9 minutes, you can hear Enomai call up to the Pnti pilot aloft and ask for a blink blink. And here's what he got back. See this little tiny white light in the center of the screen? You watch that.
Bye, Pnti. God bless us all. Blink, blink, please. A little blink, blink. Oh, yeah. Thank you. I can't wait to meet you all in the flesh. Oh, my phone.
And then his phone died. On July 9th of this past year, we had a discussion with the Pnti of our need for more proof that was real clear, audio and video footage. And in order to make sure that we were dealing with the Pnti and not just a ghost or a Star Nation or something else, we came up, Radar and I, together with a phrase that they should say. And Radar is a very casual sort of guy, and together we came up with a password phrase so that people who record things in the middle of the night and don't see their visitors can tell it's the Pnti. And the password phrase was very simple. It was, "What's up?" Or as Radar would put it, "What's up, dude?" So we took that password phrase idea of the Pnti are going to provide or say that they will help provide audio to us, and here's the phrase they will use so you know it's them. We passed that message around to all the repeat contactees of the Sandia Mountain Pnti between 11 a.m. and 12 a.m. on July 9th. Dear guys, the Pnti are going to use the password phrase "was up." Set up your recording equipment, keep your video equipment handy. If you capture it, let us know. Well, repeat contactee Jason Gerhardt in Florida, our fellow that's been able to capture all the videos over his home and work, got smart. And Jason decided he'd write them a note and put it on his microphone. And this is what the note said. The microphone is recording. Please feel free to speak into it. You can say anything you'd like. We do have one request. If you wish to fulfill it, please say, "What's up, bro?" or "What's up?" Have fun. 11 hours later, Jason Gerhardt captures the first audio recording of "What's up?" Now you'll have to listen very close. And if you wish to, you can go to the evidence section of Official First Contact and play this over and over for yourself. But here's the first audio capture of "What's up?" Listen closely. What's up? On July 13th, 4 days later, the note was still up and Jason got a second audio capture, this time in a different voice. Listen closely. What's up? That one was more whispered. On August 2nd, repeat contactee Jeff Demers up in the Michigan, Detroit area was contacted by Commander Tilcomb. And Commander Tilcomb gave Jeff this audio capture that says, "I was here now. I was here now." So what's up? What's up? I was here now. You can listen to all of these audio captures yourself over and over. Go to the evidence page of officialfirstcontact.com and scroll down. If the Pnti visit you, are you going to remember it? This is one of the most frustrating things of all the Pnti contact among our repeat experiencers. I know I got visited last night, but I don't remember it all. Is we heard over and over and over. How do I get my memories back? My memories are gone. Well, your memories aren't gone. You've had some missing time, but your memories aren't gone. They're still in your head, guys. However, what's happened, and we'll call it what it really is, you've had missing time, which means you've had a period of time where the Pnti or another telepathic star nation took control of your brain and spoke with you and suggested things to you. Now, when the Pnti do this, essentially what they do is telepathically they contact you and they put you and your brain chemistry and physiology into a slower alpha theta brainwave state, which is much more akin to a hypnotic state or a sleepwalking type state. They call that process of putting you into that receptive state, they call it being suggested. And how do you get your memories back? Well, your memories, whenever you're in a light sleep state of any kind or a hypnotic state, are stored differently than waking state of consciousness. When you're awake, your memories are stored in an easy access pathway. When you're asleep, they are still stored, but not in an easy access pathway. And when a star nation that's telepathic speaks with you and puts you in that alpha theta state, your memories are stored like dreams are in that not easy to access pathway. Your memories are still there and you can get them back, but you must re-enter the alpha theta state in order to do it. Can you do it on your own with self-hypnosis? You can try. Can you do it with a qualified hypnotherapist? You could try that too. Or you could just let them resurface on their own slowly. Usually they will come to the surface eventually, and often in one big aha moment kind of chunk. Why do they do it? Why do they put you into that alpha theta state? One, it's easier to download complex chunks of telepathic information all at once in short order. Your brain can handle it then, and in that state of consciousness, it doesn't get overwhelmed as easily as waking state of consciousness. But also, the Pnti, when they visit folks, they have their own mission protocols that they are required to follow. And what Commander Tilcomb has taught us is that in order, those mission protocols are cause no harm, or cause no fear, do no harm, leave no trace. Cause no fear, do no harm, leave no trace. He said that way nobody panics and nobody gets hurt. You have just been suggested, that's all. And whenever they do that, you can bet your bottom dollar that you've got more information that you've received in alpha state than you know. Might be interesting to go retrieve it. Otter and I have had our own missing time episodes. In fact, you can read all about ours. It's in a MUFON report dated March 31st, 2014. He and I were sitting in the living room that spring watching the end of one of the voice talent type shows. And we had been waiting for 2 hours for a particularly favorite performer of ours to do the finale. It's the commercial break, 20 minutes before the end of the show. And Otter and I are just sitting talking with one another. And I look up, and here from floor to ceiling is this huge, thick, curved wave of energy. You could see the leading edge of it slowly sweep across the room. And when you saw this semi-visible curved edge sweep through the room from floor to ceiling, as it went through us, Otter and I began to lift off the couch together. In our perception, we lifted up about 2 feet and then settled right back down. And the timing for us seemed to be we got up and then down. And we settled back down on the couch. And that was the end of it. When we settled back down on the couch, Otter and I both started jabbering at one another. Did you feel that? What was that? Oh my God. And Otter remembered seeing the face of a Pnti, as well as having on his skin the sensation like it was encased in liquidy jello. Okay, that was his physical experience. We're talking about this big curved wave that went through the living room, and Otter looks up at the TV and he goes, "Wait, hey, where's our show? Where's our guy?" Well, the show was long over. The next show following it was already playing. We had completely missed our favorite guy's performance and had at least 15, if not 22 minutes of missing time. We both know and remember which commercial was on when this distortion wave swept through the living room. And we both remember what was on the TV when we settled back down on the couch. We cannot account for at least 15 minutes of missing time. What's it like to talk to them every day? Oh my gosh. Oh, exhausting, overwhelming, delightful, funny, poignant, jaw-dropping, amazing, intense, and delightful, honestly. The telepathic information coming from the Pnti is not like just hearing words in your head, guys. It's layers and layers of emotion and images and history and other information and audio and video, and oh my gosh. And everything is so compressed into detailed chunks of information that all get downloaded in a second or two. I can give you a really good example. One day early on in meeting Drudy, I was trying to get to know her a little bit more, and I said, "Hey, Drudy, what do you do when you're not on duty at the desk? What do you do when you're off duty hours? What do you do for fun?" And she answered immediately. She said, "Oh, I take my girlfriends and we go down to the Amazon and we fly kite with the parrot flocks down there." I said, "Fly kite? What's fly kite?" And suddenly I get this download. And within 2 seconds, I suddenly get the history of fly kiting, what it is, how they do it. And basically, fly kiting is considered by them an art sport. They take a flock of birds that's several thousand strong. And while the flock is together in flight, they telepathically merge with the entire flock at once and get them to fly, shaping, moving three-dimensional images in the sky on the fly. When I got the download from Drudy about what fly kiting was, I got the sensation of her in the canopy in the Amazon. I got the image of thousands of blue parrots with red detailing and white on their wings, flying up for the last flight of the night as sunset was approaching. I got the feeling of feathers and wind and soaring. I got the feeling of what it was like on Drudy's part to telepathically merge with thousands of birds all at the same time. I got the history of this art sport of fly kiting from Drudy on her home planet, as well as the fact that they do this in the ocean with schools of fish. And the joy that was shared between the birds and the Pnti was evident. All of this came in under 2 seconds, and I got knocked back with, oh my God. When it finally went out on Twitter, what is fly kiting? It came out, we telepathically merge with bird flocks to form moving images in the sky. Kind of loses something in translation, doesn't it? Telepathy is much more than just words. Our ET friends have all kinds of humorous questions. We had one of the Pnti regular contactees, a gal by the name of Carone, up in the Seattle, Washington area, invite one of the Pnti guys to a local baseball game. She wanted him to experience what American baseball was like at the stadium, whether or not he was in a craft overhead, observing the stadium from above, or if he came with her and found a way to be with her at the stadium. But regardless, she invited him to a baseball game. This is August of this year. And the next day, we hear back from her that he had some unusual questions. And I said, oh, yeah, like what? And Carone said, he wanted to know what the special room was for. And I looked at her and said, special room. She said, yes. He wanted to know what the special room at the stadium was for, where all the women lined up in one long single line to get in. She said, I had to laugh and tell him it was just the bathroom. And all these women just had to go pee, and they were waiting their turn. And her visitor's next question was, how did all these women get their bladders to synchronize like this? We've had them ask unusual questions of us. Otter was shaven one day when one of the Pnti asked him if using the razor on his face hurt. They've asked me what I do with the hairs in our hairbrush. They've also asked, did you learn moonwalking on the moon? What do you do with the foil from the Hershey's Kisses after you've eaten them? What's the tradition? They've asked us things like, what's Earth's universal greeting gesture? Do you have a universal dance? Etc., etc. This year, they have been introducing us to other star nations. Now, Otter and I both have had experience with more than just the Pnti in our lives, but we didn't know a lot about these other nations. And now, between that nation itself and the Pnti, we are learning about their allies. Tilcom told us early on that the star nations themselves are planning our official first contact for the fall of 2021, and currently 32 visiting star nations to Earth are asking if they can be part of that event and participate. They haven't given us an exact location, although when Tilcom first told us about Earth's OFC, official first contact, he let us know it would not be at a military base, it would not be at an airport, and it was the Star Nation's desire to hold it at locations that have positive connotations for things coming down from the sky. We had to think about what would define that. What would be a place with positive connotations for things coming down from the sky historically. It was an intriguing hint on his part. They have taught us some of their greeting gestures and protocols. I can tell you that one of the first things he said is, please don't thrust out your hand to shake hands with a Star Nation person. He says some Star Nations possess rather sharp claws. And those nations understand that if you suddenly thrust your claws, as in your fingernails, in their general direction, it can be viewed as a threat. So instead, they taught us to show your open hands, then put your palms together with your fingertips up over your chest. The namaste type of gesture is universally understood by many Star Nations who possess hands as a non-threatening greeting gesture. The Pnti also taught us you can open up those hands that you have in the namaste gesture and form a bowl with your hands. They call this gesture offering the bowl, and it means, welcome, I have something for you. Offering the bowl can be gestured toward a chair. I offer you this place to sit. Offering the bowl can be gestured toward food or beverage. I have this food or this drink for you. So, nonverbal gestures, understood by any Star Nation you interact with, whether it's the Pnti or another nation. One of their sacred phrases, ideas, traditions, sayings, translates something like this. Tilcom said, you say, I hold the light for you. I breathe in the light with you. We exhale our light together and share light breath with all. I thought that was beautiful. The Pnti are listening for your invitations. They are. They're actively listening and training new employees so that they have enough people to answer requests for visits. If you would like a visit from the Pnti, I would say follow Tani's suggestions. Download your own free copy of the Telepathy 101 primer. Start to practice, commit to practice for 30 minutes a day with feedback. And if you want to, if you're ready to, after 100 days of study, invite them. You're welcome to get our book, Inviting ET. It may answer some questions about contact that you didn't even know to ask. It's available from Amazon.com, and the Telepathy 101 primer is available free from officialfirstcontact.com. We hope you've enjoyed this presentation of the Sandia Mountain Pnti and their worldwide CE5 contact. Again, my name is Sue Walker, and I will leave you with their phrase of parting goodbyes. Wear your day with ease.